Imagine living hundreds of thousands of years ago. You've just brought down a small animal after a successful hunt. You have no knife, no cooking pot, no stove, and most importantly, no controlled fire. You're hungry. So what do? You eat the meat raw. But that raises a fascinating question. How did ancient humans survive eating raw meat before they learned to control fire? Today, cooked meat feels completely normal. We roast it, we boil it, we fry it, we season it. And we rarely think about what eating meat would be like without any of those things. But for some of our earliest ancestors, raw food wasn't strange at all. It was simply food. And long before humans regularly cooked meals, our ancestors had already developed tools, hunting strategies, social cooperation, and surprisingly effective ways of processing animal carcasses. So, let's travel back to a world before cooking became a normal part of human life. Before fire, there was raw food. The first thing to understand is that humans did not suddenly appear with a cooked meat diet. Our much earlier ancestors lived for millions of years before humans began regularly controlling fire. They ate whatever their environment provided: fruits, roots, seeds, nuts, insects, eggs, and animal meat when they could obtain it. Some early human ancestors probably scavenged animals that had already died. Others eventually became more capable hunters. Either way, there was no supermarket, no refrigerator, and no safe way to preserve fresh meat for long periods. Once an animal was available, getting nutrients from it quickly was extremely valuable. Raw meat was simply one more source of energy. And animal tissue contained something especially useful: protein and fat. These provided valuable calories in environments where food could be unpredictable. They didn't eat meat like we do today. Imagine trying to eat an entire animal with your bare hands. It would be extremely difficult. But ancient humans had an advantage: stone tools. Long before sophisticated knives existed, early humans learned to strike stones together and create sharp edges. These simple tools could cut through skin. They could separate meat from bones. They could break open bones to reach the nutritious marrow inside. And they could help remove parts of an animal that were difficult or dangerous to consume. A sharp stone edge was essentially an early version of a knife. It didn't cook the meat, but it made raw meat much easier to process. One animal could therefore provide several different resources: meat, fat, marrow, organs, skin, and sometimes even tendons and other useful tissues. The animal wasn't just food, it was a complete package of resources. Raw meat wasn't always immediately dangerous today. When we hear raw meat, we immediately think about bacteria and parasites, and that's a legitimate concern. Raw meat can carry dangerous pathogens. But ancient humans didn't understand germs. They had no microscopes. They didn't know about bacteria. They didn't understand parasites. They learned through experience. If certain food repeatedly made people sick, they could begin avoiding it. If meat smelled rotten, they could recognize that something was wrong. If an animal had been dead for too long, its meat became less desirable. This wasn't modern food safety. It was survival through observation. Over countless generations, humans learned which foods were safer to eat and which ones were better avoided. They didn't know the scientific reason, but they could recognize patterns. Freshness was extremely important. Without refrigeration, fresh meat didn't stay fresh forever. Temperature mattered, weather mattered, the condition of the animal mattered, and time mattered. A freshly killed animal was very different from a carcass that had been sitting in the sun for days. Ancient humans therefore had a strong reason to process meat quickly. A successful hunt could become a race against time. The group needed to remove useful meat, protect it from scavengers, and consume or preserve it before it spoiled. In cold environments, natural freezing could slow decay. In dry environments, dehydration could help preserve some foods. But for many early humans, the simplest solution was often eat it while it was fresh. Scavenging may have come before hunting. Here's another fascinating possibility. Early humans may not have started as powerful hunters. Some of our ancestors probably took advantage of animals that had already died. Imagine discovering a carcass left behind by a large predator. The animal might still contain valuable meat, but the carcass would also attract competitors: hyenas, big cats, other predators, and other scavengers. So ancient humans had to be careful. They needed to approach quickly, take what they could, and leave before becoming the prey themselves. Stone tools became incredibly useful in this environment. They allowed humans to cut through tough hide and reach meat and marrow faster. In some cases, the real competition wasn't about killing the animal. It was about getting access to the carcass before someone else did. Bone marrow was a hidden treasure. One of the most valuable parts of a large animal wasn't always the obvious meat. It was hidden inside the bones, marrow. Large bones can contain energy-rich fatty tissue. Ancient humans learned to break open bones using stone tools. Cracked bones gave them access to something predators couldn't easily reach. This was incredibly important. Fat contains a lot of energy, and in difficult environments, high-energy foods could make a major difference. So imagine an ancient human sitting beside a carcass, a stone in one hand, a large bone in front of them, one powerful strike, and the bone cracks open. Inside is a valuable source of nutrition, no cooking required, just stone technology and knowledge passed through experience. Organs could be valuable. Two ancient humans didn't necessarily focus only on muscle meat. Internal organs could also provide important nutrients: liver, heart, kidneys, and other tissues. In many traditional hunting cultures, different parts of an animal have been valued for different reasons. For prehistoric humans, wasting edible material could be costly. An animal was difficult to obtain, so using as much of it as possible made sense. The goal wasn't simply get some meat, it was get as much useful nutrition from this animal as possible. That mindset could have increased survival. Humans had another advantage: teamwork. Eating raw meat wasn't simply an individual activity. Humans are social animals. A successful hunt or scavenging opportunity could benefit an entire group. Some people could process the animal. Others could watch for predators. Others could transport food. Others could care for children. This cooperation made accessing difficult food sources much safer. And sharing food had another advantage. It strengthened relationships. A person who successfully obtained food could share it with family members and other members of the group. That cooperation helped create stronger communities. So even before cooking, food wasn't just about eating, it was also about survival together. But raw meat had serious risks. Of course, eating raw meat wasn't perfectly safe. Far from it. Parasites could infect animals. Bacteria could multiply in meat. Spoiled food could cause severe illness, and consuming certain animal tissues could expose humans to diseases. Ancient humans couldn't eliminate these risks completely. They simply lived with them. Natural selection would also have played a role. Individuals and populations better adapted to their environments were more likely to survive and reproduce. But that doesn't mean ancient humans were immune to foodborne disease. They weren't. Many infections that modern medicine can treat could have been devastating in prehistoric communities. This is one reason the eventual control of fire became so important. Then, something changed. At some point in human history, our ancestors began using fire, but there probably wasn't one single moment when someone invented it. Fire already existed naturally. Lightning could start wildfires. Volcanic activity could produce flames. Dry vegetation could burn. The major breakthrough was learning to control and maintain fire, and eventually, humans discovered something extraordinary. Food could be placed over it, meat could be heated, and the results were completely different. Cooked meat became softer, some foods became easier to digest, and heating could reduce some harmful microorganisms. Fire didn't just provide warmth, it transformed food. Cooking changed human life. Once cooking became an important part of human life, the entire food system began to change. Tough foods became easier to chew. Some plant foods became easier to digest. Meat could be softened, and food could become more enjoyable. Cooking also created new possibilities for sharing meals. Imagine a group sitting around a fire at night. The day's hunt is over. Meat is slowly roasting. People are gathered together. Children are nearby. Someone adds another piece of wood to the flames. This wasn't simply dinner. It may have helped strengthen social bonds. Fire became a source of warmth, protection, light, and eventually, a place for human interaction. So how did they eat raw meat? The answer is surprisingly simple. They relied on what they had: fresh meat, stone tools, experience, observation, teamwork, and sometimes natural environmental conditions that slowed spoilage. They didn't need modern knives. They didn't need refrigerators, and they didn't need to understand microbiology. They learned through generations of trial and error. They discovered how to cut, how to break bones, how to identify useful parts of an animal, how to recognize spoiled food, and how to share resources. Their world was dangerous, but they were remarkably adaptable. So, how did ancient humans eat raw meat before fire was invented? They didn't have the technology we have today. Instead, they depended on sharp stones, fresh kills, animal fat, marrow, organs, observation, and cooperation. They ate food in the form nature provided it, and they learned how to make the most of every animal they obtained. But eventually, fire changed everything. It transformed meat, it transformed food, and perhaps most importantly, it transformed human life. The next time you sit beside a warm fire and eat a cooked meal, remember, there was a time when our ancestors had none of that. No ovens, no pans, no refrigerators, no cooking recipes, just a sharp stone, a fresh carcass, a hungry group, and the incredible ability to learn. Before humans mastered fire, they mastered survival, and that may have been the first step toward becoming the species we are today. If you enjoyed discovering this forgotten chapter of human history, subscribe to Tales of Sapiens, because every ordinary thing we do today has an extraordinary story hidden in the past, and we'll uncover it, one story at a time.